Episode 10. Growing Feelings of the Pair. Pierre's study was a somewhat lavish affair. Wood-panelled walls lined with packed bookshelves, his leather-bound armchair, only having recently been repaired, his large mahogany desk, a small sizzling fireplace against one wall that filled the room with a homely roasting smell, a small area for making tea, and of course an ornate hanging wall clock. The clock filled the packed room with a subtle series of ticks and tocks. On its face the time read 11:20. The room was the very same place Marka had first appeared out of thin air, almost exactly 2 weeks ago to the hour. Now she sat in her usual spot upon a plush four-legged stool with its back to one of the bookshelves, rocking gently to and fro as she interrupted Pierre's efforts to fill out his journal for the day. "Oh, come on, man, just one little clue can't hurt, can it?" she cooed.
"Marka, if I've said it once today, then I've said it 100 times. You shall simply have to wait and see."
Marka pouted playfully. "Since when did you become such a tease? Just one little hint, yes?" Pierre sighed. Mark had spent the entire day asking for clues and hints on what exactly he had planned for tomorrow, for Valentine's Day.
"Look, if I tell you something, it can only lead to dissatisfaction. Overhype, that's what the PR people call it these days, when a product promises too much and ends up being a disappointment."
Mark looked slightly lost, so Pierre continued his explanation.
"All right, think of it like this. Imagine you and your adventuring party got word of an evil army of 400, heavily armoured orcs under the command of an evil magi."
Now he had her attention. Mark had sat up eagerly as though already formulating a plan to fight this imaginary army.
"And you spend the week getting there, coming up with your battle plan and so on. However, when you arrive, it turns out the message was wrong or mistranslated, whatever. Instead of 400, it's 40, and they're goblins in leather armour rather than orcs, all under the command of some children's party wizard rather than a magi. Now, how would you feel about that?"
She frowned. "That would be stupid. I'd be most perturbed."
"Exactly,"
Pierre finished plainly, turning his attentions back to the ledgers and diaries on the desk in front of him.
"So why not head off to bed, and you'll find out all about the
date?" Marka grinned. Pierre flushed red.
Our appointment tomorrow."
Marka sighed, leaning her head back against the bookshelf behind her, with her arms holding the base of the stool. "You're no fun," she mumbled childishly, but then her face pucked up again. "Say, Pierre, how come you get to plan it all, eh? Maybe I should plan some of our Valentine's date."
"I wish you wouldn't call it that. Anyway, it's the man's job to court the woman."
Marka's face turned to one of pretend shock. "Pierre, my good man, I didn't know you were a misogynist." A fit of manly coughing filled the room at this comment.
"Why, where in God's name did you hear a word like that?"
"The internet."
Yes, that makes sense."
Marka laughed. "I'm only kidding. No need to frown like that. I know you meant no harm. Plus, it's not like I know this London town all that well. I'm sure I'd have no ideas of where to take us, even if I was the one planning."
"Yes, well, I suppose that's true."
"Hey, Pierre, is this your first Valentine's Day?" The older man's hand held in the air, his pen dangling above the paperwork beneath.
I said it before, right? Valentine's is for children, not adults. But yes, I guess it is, if you must put it like that."
"Oh, I didn't realize," Mark said, a little surprised.
"But it's not like it's my first rodeo or anything. Indeed, back in the day I was quite the ladies' man, I'll have you know. Wasn't a girl in the kingdom who didn't want to be with a man of my knightly physique," he boasted, puffing out his now greying hair and old man's body with pride, as though he was still 20 years of age. Marka looked even more surprised at this remark, but before she could comment, Pierre started once again, this time talking as he stood up and made his way over to the small tea-making station in the corner of the study. "No, I suppose there was only ever one I actually loved."
She watched as he set the kettle to boil and drew down 2 cups, filling them with cocoa powder. "I didn't ask for a drink, Mr. Ladies' Man," Marka jeered. Pierre grinned.
"Who says I'm offering? I just happen to be making 2 cups worth."
She smiled softly back at this before leaning forward and laying a hand to her chin. "Say, the one who you really liked back then, did you ever tell her how you felt?" A pained look came over Pierre's worn old face.
No, I'm afraid not. It wasn't that simple. We were always off fighting one battle or another. There was never much time for such things."
"In the stories, there's always time for romance."
"Yes, well, real life tends to be a little more intrusive."
Pierre laughed a little bitterly. Marka clutched her hands together as though bracing for an expected answer. Did you Did you think she was ugly? Too much of a tomboy? Pierre nearly dropped the steaming cup of hot chocolate he'd been carefully carrying across the room as he burst into a fit of light laughter.
What in God's name would have that to do with anything? And of course not. I mean, sure, she wasn't nearly as feminine as a girl like you are, but that was never the problem. Me and her, well, it was complicated.
As he handed her over one of the cups, a thought suddenly dawned on Pierre. It was one he felt incredibly ashamed to have not had sooner, one that seemed so obvious.
This girl in front of me. All this time I've been simply worrying about her leaving me, all alone, worrying about myself. Yet right here is someone with her own hang-ups and worries. For all your happy nature, are you hurting underneath too, Maka?
He smiled as he laid the cup down on the table next to him and retook his chair, resolute in what he'd ask next.
That word you said earlier, misogynist. Back when me and her lived, well, we didn't have words like that, ways to express ourselves. It's funny, really, but Balya and Earth mirror each other in that sense. We had no way to talk about things like sexuality or gender. In all honesty, I really did sleep around a lot with many different women, but not so much because I wanted to or even found much pleasure in it, but more like I had something to prove. Like, to be a normal man, I had to get with women, to prove to myself as much as anyone that I was normal, and that wasn't... It wasn't a me problem.
Maka nodded along attentively as Pierre continued. She knew all too well the feeling of not fitting into a society properly.
The girl was, in a way, the same way as me, and yet completely different. I really mean it when I say I don't know what gender she was for sure. She took such great strides to keep it hidden from everyone around her that I struggled to believe she wasn't doing so on purpose. I mean, who knows? Maybe she was a boy born into a girl's body, or vice versa. Maybe she was simply a tomboy, you know. But we didn't have words like transgender back then. And heck, even if we did, we could have hardly used them in our positions. I've had time to think on it since arriving on Earth. 30 years' worth of time, and postmodernist human knowledge. They have words here for everything you can imagine. Labels. Perhaps I'm asexual to some degree, or demi, or grey, or maybe Arctic had gender dysphoria, or had no interest in any sort of relationship whatsoever. All of them might have fitted how we used to feel, but honestly, I don't think I ever wanted to put a label on it. If she had actually been a boy underneath that armour, or a boy born into a girl's body, or any other configuration, I don't think any of that would have changed my feelings towards her. All I really know is this, I loved her, and no one else in my entire life as much as her. In turn, I'm sure Arctic loves someone in her own way as well. Whatever labels the two of us belong to hardly matter, does it? Ultimately, we were what we were, and we loved who we loved.
So, no, it had nothing to do with her being tomboyish. That never even factored. And no, I haven't really had any partners since coming to Earth. There was no longer a need to pretend, you see. Me and her, we just never really properly got a chance to express our feelings, I suppose, before I got brought here, Pierre finished quietly. Maka's face had gone a deep crimson shade. Pierre soon followed suit as silence cloaked the small room. You said Ardig. Ardig was the girl you loved, Maka squeaked.
Oh, wait now, hold on. That is not what I meant, what about you, then? Do you like anyone back home, eh?
Pierre fought back desperately, trying to cover up his mistake. Maka's face grew somewhat more bright red, far warmer than the drink she held cupped in her hands.
What? Maybe. But?
Well, he's younger than me, but he looks older, and I don't think he looks at me like that. At least I didn't think he did. But after what you just said, Maka muttered with a schoolgirl incoherence. Silence fell again as the two simmered like sweethearts. Finally, Maka sprang to her feet, glancing at the clock. I've passed already. I better be hitting the hay. Pierre's eyes followed her sheepish progress across the room.
Right, of course, yes. I must be calling it a night soon myself, he said.
The girl stood in the door for a few moments, hiding her face's massive grin from sight. So, thanks. I think I needed to know that, about the tomboy thing, I mean. Good night. And with that, Maka half sprinted away. Pierre felt up to his own face, to his warm cheeks. He had only meant to comfort Maka's insecurities about her tomboyish appearance. not to go and confess his own feelings towards Ardig.
But I guess Mocha is.
The clock struck ever nearer to 12. To Valentine's Day.